Welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Alex Wolf here, going solo today and debuting a new type of show that I want to do over the next few weeks. 3 big stats. And today's episode going to lead with Donte DiVincenzo. Who else? He's the newest Knick. I went into the stats and I wanted to find what he's going to bring to the Knicks. And it's a lot of three-point shooting. I'm going to have some great stats about the three-point shooting, about his consistency, and about how he could fit into pretty much any lineup right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks, and I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in sights and sounds on YouTube. I appreciate you making us a part of your daily routine. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site, The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land, and I'm going solo today. Gavin's off today, so I am going to talk about Donte DiVincenzo because it seems like everybody still wants to hear about this guy. And I think it makes sense why, right? He's probably going to be the premier free agent acquisition for the Knicks this offseason. TBD on if there's going to be a trade acquisition, that the Knicks end up getting before the end of the summer. But as of right now, if the season were to start today, he's the big addition going into next year. So I think it's important to understand what he can bring to the team. And I think Gavin and I have kind of talked about this at length, but it's fully my opinion that what you're getting out of him is a lot of shooting and good defense and just sort of an intangibly good player. And I think that the stats bear that out. I went in and I was kind of trying to look for what the negatives are with DiVincenzo, and I had a really hard time, if I'm being completely honest. There's very few things that stand out as far as this guy not being a productive player. And so this is actually, and maybe this is a little, Knicks colored glasses on, little Homer takes here, but this is going to be a pretty positive episode all in all, because he's a really good player. Let's hop right into it, right? He shot last year 42% on corner threes. That was the 63rd percentile for wings. That would have placed him third on the Knicks last year behind Jalen Brunson and Quentin Grimes. I'm leaving Josh Hart off of this list just because he had a really small sample size. And obviously, as we saw in the playoffs, was not quite the shooter that he was in his handful of games for the Knicks prior to the postseason. So I feel comfortable kind of throwing that out. But if you want to get technical about it, he technically shot worse than Hart did just on the Knicks last year from that spot. And then on non-corner threes, DiVincenzo shot 40%. That was in the 78th percentile for wings. These numbers are all per cleaning the glass. That puts him second on the Knicks behind only Jalen Brunson. And he shot 40% on all of his threes, which is good for 75th percentile among wings. And that is second on the Knicks again, only behind Jalen Brunson. I also thought that it was interesting that 67% of his shots were threes and only 13% were from mid-range. It was a similar percentage from at the rim, which you want to hopefully see go up, with him cutting more or, attacking off the dribble a little more on the perimeter. But in a nutshell, this guy shoots threes and he plays pretty good defense. And I'll get into some lineup data in a little bit, but he tends to be an overwhelming positive when he's on the floor. I thought I would pull some of the Knicks overall stats here because I thought this was a little interesting as well. So again, he shot 42% on corner threes. The Knicks as a team shot 38.1% on corner threes. That was 17th in the NBA last year. Then he shot 40% on non-corner threes again. The Knicks as a whole shot 34.8% on non-corner threes. That was 21st in the NBA. And then one more time, 40% overall on threes this past year. And the Knicks as a whole shot 35.8% on all threes, and that was 21st in the NBA. So this is where I think with DiVincenzo, the second that he steps on a floor for the Knicks, he is going to make them a better shooting basketball team. Now, what units he's going to be playing with, I don't know. Nobody's going to know until we start seeing, well, first we have to see what the final team is going to look like. If the Knicks decide to sign another power forward, if they uh, ultimately make a big trade and that shakes things up in the lineup, whatever the case may be, the things maybe aren't set just yet. But as of right now, if I were to fathom a guess, I think he's obviously going to be coming off the bench, unless he really has a great preseason or something and somehow supplants Quentin Grimes. But I don't really see that being super likely. I think it would be more likely that they'll want to pair him with Josh Hart because, relationships matter and all that stuff. And, he knows Josh Hart from Villanova already, obviously knows Jalen Brunson already as well. But I think those three will get a decent amount of playing time together, perhaps with Brunson being the first man out. And then, Randall kind of carrying the offense through the first quarter, and then Brunson getting to come in with those two other guys, his two former Villanova teammates, and them getting some run together. I don't know what the case is there, but that would be a pretty good guess for me. But he's probably also going to be playing with Emmanuel Quickly, with Josh Hart, with maybe RJ Barrett as the backup four for stretches. And those three guys can all get inside pretty well. Like Josh Hart definitely has the ability to get inside, definitely drives in transition, and wants to attack the rim pretty much at all times, and clearly would prefer that to being a spot up 3-point shooter, as we saw late in the playoffs. And then Emmanuel Quickly has the ability to get inside. I won't say quite at will, but pretty much at will. Ditto for RJ Barrett. And both of them, have shown an interest in getting inside and feeding teammates on the perimeter. So, in my opinion, that means that by getting DiVincenzo in there and giving him those opportunities with that unit, you're going to see him take a ton of threes and you're going to see him make a ton of threes. And that's just kind of his calling card at this point. I do want to, though, get into in the next segment just how consistent he's been, because I think that that's going to be a key as well. I think that I pulled some stats on some of the Knicks players and some of their young shooters that had some kind of streaky months last year. And DiVincenzo didn't really do that. So I'm going to get into that in the next segment in just a moment. But first, I do have to remind you all that today's show is brought to you by Birddogs. And I don't know if you guys have heard me talk about Birddogs yet, but they are fantastic. I am kind of hooked, if I'm being completely honest. I have a couple pairs of their shorts. I ordered another pair that I have coming on the way, and I'm going on a little vacation to California next week, and very much looking forward to wearing them there. That's because Bird Dog shorts, they're so comfortable and they look really nice. Like I gotta say, I've worked pretty hard over my years on this earth to keep myself in decent shape, and not fall prey to becoming overweight like I definitely would if I didn't exercise as much as I do. And Bird Dogs make me feel like that work pays off a little bit. They actually, they kind of hug your curves nicely, which is a thing that can happen for guys too. So if you want to look good, Bird Dogs are the way to go. But more importantly, they have 4-way stretch fabric and are moisture wicking. So if you're ever caught in a situation where you're like me and you're going to be sweating a bunch, don't have to worry about that downstairs. They even come with a lining on the inside for extra moisture dispersion, if that's a term that I can use to describe them. But they're just absolutely fantastic shorts. They're so comfortable, and honestly, I'm like always waiting for the second that they're done in the laundry so I can wear them again and get some more use out of them. So if you want to get some for yourself, go to birddogs.com/lockedonnba and enter promo code Locked On NBA for a free Yeti style tumbler. That's birddogs.com/Locked On NBA or promo code Locked On NBA for a free Yeti style tumbler. It's pretty great too. I've been drinking my coffee out of it pretty much every morning, so definitely check that out as well. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. I can definitely promise you that. All right, and I'm back in, continuing to talk about Donte DiVincenzo. And so I alluded to this at the end of the last segment. So obviously went through all those numbers, over 40% across the board, no matter where he's shooting threes. That's a great starting point. But one thing that I've noticed, and this has been a frustrating trend for the Knicks for years now. This isn't just with their current crop of guys. The 3-point shooting is very streaky. I quite frankly did not even bother pulling RJ Barrett for these numbers I'm about to share in a moment, but we've seen him go through these stretches where he could barely make a three, followed by shooting like 45% for a month. We've even seen Quentin Grimes and Emmanuel Quickly do it though, where they go through stretches where they'll shoot 30% from three for a month and then, kind of slowly work their way back up or just completely light on fire and shoot 45% for a month and then kind of come back to earth again. And we saw that sort of bite the Knicks in the playoffs again. I feel like this offseason has been largely about fixing the deficiencies that the Knicks had with whatever resources they have at this moment, fix the deficiencies they had in the playoffs, particularly in that Heat series, obviously where they had to bow out to the eventual Eastern Conference champions. And one of the biggest things was that they just didn't have consistent shooting, whether it was Julius Randle, who obviously was hurt, RJ Barrett, who, to be clear, had a great playoffs and was doing most of his damage by getting inside and drawing fouls, but had very mixed bag results shooting the three. Quentin Grimes also had very mixed bag results. And, we talk about how much he was able to stretch the floor, but unfortunately, he wasn't able to make as many as you wanted. And Emmanuel Quickly, who kind of had the same problems where he just couldn't really hit shots. Josh Hart, obviously, as I said already, went super cold in the playoffs compared to the blistering production they did for the Knicks during the regular season. So I think their biggest thing was like, we need to get more shooting and we need to have a consistent shooter. Well, I think they found one in Donte DiVincenzo. If you check through, so these I pulled from Basketball Reference. They have a great split stats page that lets you sort. Well, it doesn't sort, they pre-sorted it for you, but lets you see how guys shot in different segments of the season. So it's sometimes it's pre All-Star break, post All-Star break. There's literally like days of the week I think they have in there. There's like all kinds of crazy stuff, but the one thing they show is by month, and I thought that would be interesting to look at because the Knicks again have all these guys that, and maybe it could be written off to them being a pretty young team, but a lot of guys that aren't necessarily the most consistent shooting the three. So let's see how consistent Donte DiVincenzo was. So 3-point percentage by month last season. In October, he shot 33%, but that was only in 3 games. So I think you can write that off to small sample size. November shoots 35%. December shoots 40.6%. January shoots 40.8%. February shoots 50%. March, not quite sure what happened there, shot 29%. And then April shot 48%, but only on 23 attempts. I should note February, when he shot 50%, that was on 80 attempts that month. So he made 40 out of 80 3-pointers, which is a pretty significant sample size. This is a guy that took, I believe, like 3 to 5, maybe more like 5 3-point attempts per game last year. Didn't pull that number of all the numbers that I did pull here. Let's see if I can find that real quick. DiVincenzo shot 5.3 3-point attempts per game this past year, which is a solid volume. So to do that and to hit 50% in an entire calendar month, pretty solid stuff. And that's much less variance, I think, than what you see from some of the other guys on the Knicks. So, for example, Emmanuel Quickly, I won't bother saying each month by name, but he went 30%, 30%, 36%, 38%, 41%, 36%, 48% this past season from three. Grimes went 29%, 39%, 32.5%, 35.5%, 45%, 46.5% through the end of throughout the whole season. And the Knicks as a whole went 34%, 31%, 36.5%, 35.5%, 37%, 37%, 37%. So in the end, I guess it all sort of evened out in its own special way for the Knicks. And yet you sense that they have enough shooting talent that if you added one person that can consistently hit those, those numbers every single month where he's shooting somewhere between 35 and 40%, if not higher, to a cast of guys that sometimes are a little streaky, but where guys can get hot. Emmanuel Quickly will get hot for a month. Brunson was super consistent as well. So that's great. But like Grimes will get super hot for a month, whatever. Having a guy like DiVincenzo that can always go out there and hit 3-pointers, I think is going to be really key for the Knicks. I also think having someone that shoots as many threes as he does and seems pretty slump proof and can supplement Jalen Brunson in that regard can only be a good thing, because I think that Brunson was definitely a little overworked this past year, in the sense that he had to, especially in the playoffs, not only be the guy that created for everybody else, not only be the only source of offense, but also kind of had the burden on him of like, you're the only consistent shooter out there right now. Like, you're the only guy. And I mean, myself as a fan, I'm sure some of you listening as fans, you were watching and he was one of the only guys that you would get that good feeling in your stomach about. Like, when he would take a three, you'd say, okay, I think that's going to go in. And that's not something that I felt for pretty much anyone else on the Knicks throughout the postseason, and at times during the regular season, because Brunson was just the only guy that you could reliably count on to make those shots. DiVincenzo, I think, has put himself in that position where he is one of the more consistent guys in the entire NBA at this point, as far as month to month, game to game, attempt to attempt, being one of the better shooters that you can offer. And our buddy Cyrus Satsas from the Locked On Warriors podcast, when I talked to him, seemed to echo those same sentiments. It seems like Warriors fans are super upset about losing DiVincenzo for some of those reasons exactly. So uh, I think that, again, it's really tough to look at this and be like, well, what negatives are there? Because I see so few for a guy in the role that DiVincenzo is going to fill for the Knicks. I think that in many ways he's going to be sort of a perfect fit. And if we're talking about perfect fits, he was also a perfect fit with one of the greatest cores in the history of the NBA this past season. And I want to highlight that in just a second as well. But I do have to real quick remind you all that today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. And whether you're dealing with decisions about your career, relationships, or anything else, therapy can help you stay connected to what you really want while you navigate life, so you can move forward with confidence and excitement. And I got to tell you, like, it's helpful learning positive coping skills, how to set boundaries, and therapy could really empower you to be a better version of yourself. You know, I think a lot of times we think to ourselves, I can handle it. Like, oh, life's pretty good right now. Things aren't getting me that down. And yet, eh, everybody's human. Everybody gets down sometimes. Everybody needs to be lifted up by someone. And sometimes you find that in, your own circle of people, your friends, your family. But sometimes you need to speak to someone that you can just fully open up to with no fear of judgment, no fear of repercussions. And also just, to speak to someone who understands the brain and understands how to help you process different things. And that's where BetterHelp can come in and get you fixed up with a mental health professional. If you're thinking about starting therapy, you should give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnba today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba. All right, and I am back in to continue talking Donte DiVincenzo. And as I mentioned in the last segment there, uh, there's some pretty great info about how Donte DiVincenzo was a positive for the Golden State Warriors this past season. So here's just a couple stats here, real quick. So, of players that played at least 200 minutes with Golden State last year, Dante was the only non starter with a positive on off per basketball reference, or regular non starter, a guy that is other than the preferred starting five of the Warriors. Let's put it that way. So, their preferred starting five was, of course, Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green, Kevon Looney. That's the five that they typically want to go with starting. And then they had Jordan Poole, Donte DiVincenzo, et cetera, off the bench. So Dante, other than that core five, that Golden State preferred to start was the only guy to put up a positive net rating, which you should consider too. He was mostly playing with those guys off the bench. So he elevated even his bench teammates that some of them had pretty ghastly on-off numbers on the Warriors. Your Kumingas, even Jordan Poole, actually. I wonder if you're wondering why the Warriors sent him off for Chris Paul. They're a very analytics forward team, and analytics did not love Jordan Poole's performance with the Golden State Warriors this year and the impact he brought to the floor. But DiVincenzo was sort of like the lone shining light in that bench unit. But also, and this raised my eyebrows a little bit, the lineup of Stephen Curry, Donte DiVincenzo, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and Kevon Looney. So you just sub him in for Andrew Wiggins there you sub him in at the 2 and you move Klay to the 3, which maybe doesn't sound that dissimilar to what the Knicks could potentially be looking to do at times with, Brunson, and then bring in DiVincenzo for Grimes or RJ Barrett and play him with their starting lineup that works pretty well, I think. Maybe the numbers don't always love the Knicks there. I think if he came in for RJ, maybe that would be the best, because get a lower usage player out there. But at any rate, him in there with the Warriors' big three plus Kevon Looney, they got the second most reps of any Warriors lineup last year, and they were a whopping 18.4 points better per 100 possessions. That is huge. That was also the second best lineup that the Warriors had on their team, and one of their highest minute lineups, probably because they realized, hey, we've got a good thing going here. We should definitely take advantage of that. Maybe take some notes there, Tom Thibodeau. Although, in all fairness to Tibbs, he did do a better job this year than in past years. But there was another important stat here that I think is important towards why he was such a good fit with those guys. Obviously, with offensive forces like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, albeit a little diminished at this point in his career, but those two being like your main two guys, Draymond Green handling some of the ball handling and stuff like that. So Donte had a 15.6% usage last year per cleaning the glass, and that was just, and I say this actually positively, that was just in the 40th percentile for wings. I think for a player like Donte DiVincenzo, you don't want him to have a high usage. You want a guy that is going to impact the game positively, which the numbers suggest that he did, that is not going to be demanding of the ball to make that happen. It's sort of a similar reason to why I think I've voiced this on the pod a few times. I've definitely said this like privately to people when I'm talking about, potential Knicks deals or whatever. I think that if the Knicks look to make a deal for a big high usage star or whatever, if they get the option to include like RJ Barrett versus include like Emmanuel Quickly, I think it makes a lot more sense to include an RJ Barrett, because certain players just thrive with higher usage. And RJ is one of those guys. Like if he's not getting a ton of usage, he's not good enough as just like a spot up shooter. He's not good enough as a standalone defender to really justify being out there, unless he's having a particularly great shooting game or whatever, or a particularly great defensive game, which those are fewer and further between now, with him being more of a high usage offensive player. So, I think that if you try to trade for like I don't know, let's just use his name, even though I don't think it's gonna happen. Like if you try to trade for like a Paul George type player that's going to be high usage, it makes more sense to hold on to the Quicklies and the Grimes of the world than an RJ Barrett if they're viewed as roughly the same value by a prospective team for them. And for that same reason, I think Donte DiVincenzo is really good to be playing out there with guys like Jalen Brunson, with Emmanuel Quickly even. Like you want to get, if Quickly's coming off the bench and he's going to be running the offense, you want to get him more reps and you want to give him more opportunity to be the guy like stirring the pot, with the second unit there. And DiVincenzo is not going to take anything away from that, because he's going to still be a lights out 3-point shooter. He's going to affect the game positively, and he doesn't need a high usage percentage to make an impact. So I think that's why he slotted in so well with one of the best 3-man tandems that we've ever seen in NBA history, quite frankly, with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. And I think that he could potentially bring that to the Knicks as well. So I think that's it. You know, a little shorter-ish episode for me today, but I just wanted to get into some of these stats, and I want to do some more of this. I want to talk about more of the players on the Knicks because I, it's always important to watch the games as well. But I think that there's a lot that can be gleaned from stats, especially once you already have the eye test understanding of what a player is, to then get either some justification or like, you know, some validation for what you see with your eyes, or to use the stats to sort of inform you on maybe what your eyes were lying about a certain player. Um, I think it's important. And so I want to do some more of these three stats episodes. And there will be some more the rest of this week because I'm gonna take the next two episodes after this one as well. So keep your eyes out for that, keep your ears out for that. I'll see you on YouTube or in your favorite podcast app the rest of the week. But until next time, thank you all for listening, and I'll talk to you guys all soon. Peace out.